I was in an interview like this and we were talking about cobots. And a cobot sounds like C3PO, sounds like R2D2. Someone who's there to serve you, not terribly brilliant, but supports you. That's the wrong term for what we're going to see. It really is co-pilot, someone who is almost your equal, who's there to support you. So I think that's going to be exciting.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Yazad Dalal, who's a Managing Director at Accenture. Yazad also co-leads Accenture's AI and HR working group in Europe and is a regional lead for Aware, Accenture's offering for measuring DEI initiatives and performance. During the episode, Yazad shares how AI and automation are reshaping careers and workplaces. He talks about what Accenture's $3 billion investment in AI means for their clients and the future of work, and also the skills and capabilities people will need to adapt to workplaces that are increasingly influenced by generative AI. As always, before we jump to the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Yazad, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, Chris. Good to be here.
I know. Can you believe we've done probably 20 different events together, workshops, summits, everything, all virtually.
All virtually, the last 3 years.
Last 3 years, and now we're here in person.
It's great. It's good to be in person.
Tell everyone a little bit more about you personally and
Sure.
your journey to where we are now.
I'm a New Yorker, which I'm very proud of. Born and raised, but I've been living abroad for the past 10 years. Living in London with my wife and my two beautiful boys. About 5 years coming up in October. But before this, we were actually in Singapore for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Which was an amazing experience. So to be an American family, living in Asia for over half a decade and now doing the same thing in this part of the world.
The kids have passports there as well?
They're both American, even though one is born in Singapore.
Oh, okay, so okay, all right.
So one is born in New York, one is born in Singapore, but they sound like you, Chris. There's a lot of mummy, daddy. So
they picked it up. So what age were they when they came here?
6 and 3.
Okay, so they picked it. Okay.
Yes.
In school.
Yes, they've got their cute little English schoolboy uniforms, and they're playing the rugby, cricket, and football, not soccer.
Football, soccer. What do they call it? Crisps or chips?
Crisps.
Crisps.
And tomato. They're following all the rules. We're very lucky to have had the experience that we've had. It's amazing for me because what I'm very passionate about, what I love, is interacting with people from different cultures, experiencing different business cultures, traveling, seeing the world. But also sharing ideas from different parts of the world so that pollinates. Of course, that requires a lot of learning, which I'm constantly trying to do. And especially these last year or so, I think it's been like a fire hose of learning.
Yeah, for everyone.
Not just in HR, but in technology in general. So that's been very exciting. And I was at Oracle for a long time, which is how you and I met. I've been at Accenture for the last 2 years, but always focused on HR tech, HR innovation. That's what I'm excited about. How do we help amazing companies find and keep amazing people? That's what I love to do.
So when you say Managing Director at Accenture, that's for the Oracle HCM.
We have a huge business just dedicated to Oracle, of course, and also other huge businesses dedicated to other major technology platforms. And within that Oracle business group, I look after the HCM practice, the HR software practice for Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Definitely keeping you busy then.
Very busy.
Traveling much?
A little bit more. I mean, there was a drought. I gotta say,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
For someone who has chosen his roles because of the travel involved, there was definitely a
So you
quiet
enjoyed
period.
that part? Because some leaders I speak to, they're like, some leaders are like, I can't, I got, and you actually get energy from that.
I get all of my energy from being in front of people and from being away from my desk. So sitting in my living room for 2 years was not the most fun experience for me.
Is that why you was always happy to speak at the events virtually?
Absolutely.
You're like, Chris, sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I need that connection. I think a lot of us need that human connection.
100%. I know one of the things that we both have in common is our passion for technology, and AI, generative AI is kind of just taken over. You can't go online or go on LinkedIn without even seeing it now. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, especially as you're speaking, you're working it internally, you're also speaking to customers. How do you envision generative AI technologies and how it's going to revolutionize current job roles, work processes, etc.?
Well, I mean, I'll share a few thoughts with you, but I think the first one that I really want to get across, there is so much doomsaying about,
yeah, it's true.
And it's been true since the Industrial Revolution, right? You have the whole Luddite movement is about breaking down these evil weaving looms that are going to steal our jobs. And I think so. It's been true for 200 years. And it's never actually been validated, ever. There's momentary pain. The momentary pain is when we as humans, as employees, as workers, don't at least try to keep up with change, then yes, there's pain. And I want to be very empathetic to that. So I think it's valid to have some fear or hesitation around, hey, I've done the same thing for 20 years. I'm probably going to work for another 20. Is what I've done now completely invalid? And what do I need to do to now keep up? So I get that fear. But in terms of whole scale, oh, we're going to lose 5 million, 50 million jobs over the next 10 years. And some very prestigious firms and thought leaders are saying things like that. I don't buy into it at all. I think we have so many examples of that not coming true. If you look at simple innovations like the calculator, did all the people who were slide rule experts suddenly lose their jobs? If we look at something that had massive societal change, if you were a female in the Western world and working in the 40s, 50s, 60s, it's very, very likely you were in some sort of administrative role, PA or a secretary. And we don't necessarily think back to it too much, but even mid-level managers, almost all men, had a secretary. Everybody had a secretary. Did those women lose their jobs and now have to stay at home for the last 40 years because we've got Microsoft Office or calendaring tools or we all know how to type? Of course not. In fact, it had a massive lift in opening up a tremendous number of other job opportunities to women.
Yeah.
That's a massive net positive for society. And these days, it's only very senior people that tend to have full-time dedicated personal assistants. Very often they're shared. In my case, and I'm not saying I'm super senior at Accenture, I actually have a support from a team of people that are probably managing 20, 30, 40 folks that are in my role. That to me is evidence that a technology advent does not spell doom for an entire occupational class and actually can have societal lift.
Same with the internet itself, right?
Of course.
When the internet happened, I was like, oh, think about millions of jobs that have been created from the internet. But when it first came out, everyone was like, oh no.
I come from an Indian immigrant family in the US, very stereotypical in the sense that my job options in my mind as a teenager were, man, I got to be either a lawyer, an engineer, an accountant, doctor.
Doctor.
Okay?
Yeah.
My sister went to pursue her PhD. My brother is a doctor. I studied English literature.
Your parents not too happy about that.
Well, but what it meant was I ended up doing jobs that they didn't think A, existed, and B, that I could possibly be qualified for having read English and French lit. And what were those jobs? Working in an internet startup called Monster.com. That's a job board.
Yeah.
That hadn't existed before 1995,
Well,
1994.
most of the jobs we're talking about,
Correct.
vast majority never existed in our generation, when we came out of school.
Exactly.
And it'll be the same for the next generation that's going to come out of school.
Well, so now if we fast forward to today, one of the most sought after jobs on the market is ChatGPT prompt engineer.
I literally have it written down on my notepad right now because I had in brackets under that question, ChatGPT prompt engineer.
Yeah.
That's a brand new opportunity.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But if you think back to the dawn of the internet, like you were saying, Google was only as good as the searches that you put into it, or Yahoo or Ask Jeeves or whatever you were using, only as good as the question it's asked. And so that's the whole concept with ChatGPT now is, what do we want to ask it? If you ask mundane questions, you're going to get mundane answers. If you ask basic questions, you're going to get basic answers, and you'll question the potential of the tool. But if you ask thoughtful questions, and the big difference there's many differences between ChatGPT and Google, but one of the biggest is it's iterative. So you can ask it a question, it supplies an answer, and you can then ask questions or give directions related to that answer.
And keep going. Yeah.
And keep going. It becomes conversational, which is, I think, the whole point of the name.
You can also tell it to then save that.
Yes.
For next time, so it remembers. So the more you feed into it, the better it gets.
Exactly.
Which is really exciting, but also it's kind of scary at the same time. How do you feel like this is going to change the way work gets done?
I think we have evidence already of what we're going to do with this. We should just look at how we currently operate. So I think your typical white collar worker, if they're sitting at a laptop or desktop, and I'm going to make a guess that this is true for 80, 90% of the people who are watching this, right now they have their email client, so Outlook or Gmail, open. They have their messaging client, Slack, Teams, whatever, open. They will have whatever is the main tool they spend their day in. PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Word, If they are in something to do with design, they'll have Figma or Adobe open. If they're in sales, they'll have Salesforce open or whatever their CRM is. All of that's open. And especially in the last couple of years, they have become habituated to, while speaking to someone in a meeting or speaking to a client or talking to their boss or their team, to be querying or acting in one of those productivity tools simultaneously.
Yeah.
So that is our current way of working. And I think ChatGPT fits, and tools like it fit seamlessly into that. It will be one more window that's open. The primary difference is going to be that you will be, and we will be able to use that to query much more than act. So in email, you're acting. In all these other productivity tools, you're acting. You're building a table, you are writing a memo, you are creating a presentation. Now the power will be to ask questions. And the massive advantage, first of all, if you are in a meeting with your boss or someone that you hope to impress, and you're able to answer questions on the fly as they're asked.
Serve it straight up. Yeah.
You're going to look amazing. You know, the more clinical way to describe that is your productivity has gone up. Depending on how far the ChatGPT advances and the development tools that get piled on top of it, if it's actively listening to your conversation, it may surface suggested ideas, thoughts, responses, even before you put in the query. Then it becomes truly, like you and I were talking about earlier, a co-pilot.
Yes.
I was thinking about a few years ago, I was in an interview like this and we were talking about cobots. And a cobot sounds like C3PO, sounds like R2D2. Someone who's there to serve you, not terribly brilliant, but supports you. That's the wrong term for what we're going to see. It really is co-pilot, someone who is almost your equal, who's there to support you. So I think that's going to be exciting. The danger, and what I think a lot of companies need to be very, very cautious of, is if, for instance, in that example, you do allow it to listen, what are the rules you're going to put around that? What are the rules you're going to put around how much data you're willing to provide to what is essentially a third party? How clean is the data that you're putting in?
Explain that for everyone, though. What do you mean by that?
For anyone who's used ChatGPT, which I think they've reached a couple 100 million users at this point, which is incredible. The adoption rates, faster than Facebook, faster than the telephone, faster than TV. Very famously, it's giving bad answers from time to time. And these kind of phantom answers that it's giving are because its data set is the internet. And the internet famously has a lot of nonsense in it. So it might have a quote that sounds like it came from The Guardian, and it may assess that there's a probability of 90% that The Guardian did say this. And so it'll make that attribution, even if it's false.
Yeah, that's where it gets dangerous.
And that gets dangerous, but it's still a tool and maybe doesn't have massive responsibility around that. Now imagine within the firm, if you are using a similar model like a ChatGPT, but it's basing its queries on your data. If your data isn't clean, isn't correct, isn't accurate, it's going to serve up these phantom responses. That can have major consequences. I see with a lot of clients is recognizing the importance before you invest and experiment with these large language models, with querying the ChatGPT-like platforms. Is your data clean? How do you set up definitions for what clean means? What are the processes you're going to put in place to begin that cleansing activity? How do you maintain that going forward? Because of course, the other thing is there's a constant stream of new data coming in. The moment you've cleansed or processed a certain set, your existing set, it's probably increased by 10%. So you need to have an active operation to continuously clean. That's really critical. And then you can at least have a higher level of certainty or comfort in querying that data.
How are you approaching that at Accenture?
So within Accenture, we very early on developed a COE, a Center of Excellence for Data and AI. So it's a kind of governing body. It is a single repository of what are our policies, what are our security guidelines, what is our approach, our do's and don'ts, what is our governance around data, use of data. And to give you an example, very early on, we had a very clear communication that we were not to use ChatGPT for any of our own work because we wanted to be cautious that our data, and more importantly, perhaps our clients' data, is not being uploaded to a third party. And I think that's really important to have those clear guidelines.
Yeah, because if you copy in, the people don't realize, I don't think people even realize that if you, whatever you copy in to ChatGPT it's out there.
Correct.
So
you know, I think we have a false sense of security because so much of the consumer tools that we use or make a big deal about encryption. WhatsApp, all your WhatsApps are encrypted.
Yeah.
Great. Literally, in order to function, ChatGPT needs to take what you gave it and put it in its servers to process. It's not able to give that back to you.
And that's a big issue right now. Right? You're seeing a lot of news and issues around IP.
Yes.
Who owns this? People writing books and selling them online with other people's IP integrating it. It's getting really confusing. And there's no legislation for this.
Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, they're working on it, but there's no precedent.
And we can't wait for governments to do it. I think that Rishi Sunak in the UK has announced that he wants the UK to be one of the leads in providing regulation around not AI itself, but the use of AI.
Yeah.
Which is a very important distinction as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be foolish, dangerous, and impossible to say, stop developing AI tools, which I think recently a group of people had said, let's put a pause on it for 6 months. Not realistic. But to put in guidelines to regulate how it's used, how data is treated, how privacy is addressed. And I think it's going to take some time for governments to do that. I think Emmanuel Macron also announced in the last couple of days that he intends to spearhead something like that in France or in the EU. But I think companies can't wait. They need to have their own sense, build a center of excellence for AI within the firm, even if it's in early days, to identify how are we going to clean our data, how are we going to treat our data from a security standpoint, a risk standpoint, how are we going to develop and govern policies around AI usage for our people, for our clients. At least start with this.
Yeah.
And then you can start experimenting.
100%. What are you hearing from clients right now? I'm sure you've got a lot of people calling.
We've had,
what do we do?
I think hundreds and hundreds of client conversations about AI just in the last few months. There's a few common themes that we hear from clients. One is, to your question, where do we start?
Yeah.
Very often what we're saying is, well, look at what we're doing here within Accenture. We built a center of excellence for this. Start with that. Who owns this in your firm? What resources do they need? Give them 2 or 3 goals and point everyone to them so that at least you know where to go. Even if there isn't clarity on what to do yet, you know who to discuss it with. So I think this is a big one, and we're helping clients figure out what that means for them and how to build those centers of excellence. The other is around experimentation. Where should we start with this? Is it to examine how, I love this example, and I'm very curious myself personally to learn more how effective it can be. How do we use AI to examine our supply chain and our vendors and customers so that we can track how they are performing against our ESG goals and metrics?
That's going to be a big one.
Right? It's not enough for a firm to say we have a carbon neutral goal of X or we have a gender equality goal of Y. But if our entire supply chain, our partner ecosystem is really far away from that, and they are building their businesses on ours, how pointless or relevant are our goals?
Yeah.
I love that idea.
But that would mean you'd need to be able to access their data.
Right. So that, again, depends on what they're willing to provide or not provide.
It gets complicated.
That's the dilemma, yes. Well, to me, everything to do with AI starts with data. None of these tools are effective unless the data set exists, is accessible, is clean, and has very clear security protocols.
The same thing we talk about when we talk about people analytics. Even the question of where do you start? It's a similar thing for many organizations.
There's a use case though that I really like, which is, a lot of clients ask us about end-to-end use cases. Give us some examples of how we can implement this, not necessarily across the whole firm, but in a particular area. And there's a great one that's people-oriented, which is similar to what we were talking about with the Copilot, to take a customer service agent and turn them into a super agent. How often do we as consumers, we're sitting on that call and they say, ooh, let me get back to you. Ooh, let me check my system.
Every call.
Let me check my CRM. Oh, let me get my manager. How much of that goes away if you have a super smart Copilot that's ChatGPT or equivalent powered, that has access to your CRM, access to all of your databases, that's basically giving you that information almost in real time.
Because it's listening to the call.
And if it's listening to the call, might even anticipate what your customer is about to ask for. And say, you know what, here's the answer. You can do more calls, customer satisfaction goes up, productivity goes up. As productivity increases, by the way, compensation increases. That's why it gives the lie to this whole, going back to the earlier point, the whole point about people saying this is going to steal our jobs, false. It's going to make existing roles more productive, open up millions of new roles and jobs and opportunities for people around the world. And because as we become more productive, we can demand more pay for those of us living and working in market economies, we're actually going to be more successful as a result.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something to be very excited about, not scared of.
Well, Accenture's you're a good example of that. I saw in the news you're making a $3 billion investment, and that includes another hiring of another, you said around about 40,000.
Well, going up to 80,000 people,
80,000.
yes.
So from 40 to 80,000 people. So you're hiring people, not letting people, so that's pretty incredible.
It's amazing. And I think the investments in these things, it's not just ChatGPT prompt engineer.
Yeah.
But, if I think back along the last 15 years, the number of jobs that just simply did not exist. Social media manager, SEO analyst.
So many.
There's so many roles that didn't exist pre-internet. And as we've moved into this Web3 economy, there are so many roles about supporting businesses that are exclusively in that area of technology that literally the industry didn't exist, the roles that didn't exist, the skills didn't exist. It's a massive opportunity for people, I think, who are in high school today, in university, to pick up skills that didn't even occur to us even 5-10 years ago.
What does this mean for leaders and managers and how they make decisions? We've always spoke about data-driven decision-making, but this takes that to a whole another level.
It's two pieces there that we have to be aware of. It's not just augmenting our own personal skills for our own role, but at least augmenting our awareness of the skills required for the people who are working for us so that we understand what learning they need, how much time that learning will take, and then how they can apply it. So we may not need to necessarily be an expert in writing prompts for ChatGPT,
Sure,
but at least be aware of the importance of it so that we can empower our people, give them permission. Yes, go get trained up on that. I know it has value. I may not recognize yet what the application is in my team, in my business, in my practice. I do understand that it has value, so go get it. What I worry about is managers who think that some of this is a little bit fluffy or only going to be relevant in the more distant future, not allowing their people to invest in it. And I feel bad for them because what's going to happen is their people will leave.
My wife's company, they've banned the use of it to the point where they can track whether you open it on your PC.
Right.
So that's how serious they're taking it as well. But in many instances, it's really helpful for a million reasons for employees to use it, to your point. But because they're afraid of it and they haven't set a clear governance structure and a COE for it, they no one, and I asked my wife, I was like, who do you go to for that? No idea, to your point. Like, I wouldn't even have a clue.
Well, I think we do have to be conscious of that,
And this is a large finance company, just to be clear.
But that's important. And I think it's not just for finance. We have to be conscious of the privacy that we are letting go of as consumers and as employees in return for higher productivity. Okay? And
that's scary for many companies.
It's scary for many companies. It's scary for many people as well.
Too, yeah.
So for example, long ago, 10 years ago, I think the majority of people around the world stopped worrying about who has their credit card number. And it's very likely that most of the people watching this have at least one credit card uploaded with some website.
Which saves it in your browser now, right?
Exactly.
On Chrome.
Saves it on your phone, saves it on your browser. And when we talk to customer service, we don't seem to mind anymore that someone in India or Philippines or anywhere else on the other side of the world has access to that credit card number, because the productivity that it provides in our personal lives obviates the risk that we perceive around someone stealing our number. So we need to get used to that in our professional lives as well. It probably does feel intrusive, for instance, in the company you were just describing, that, ooh, they're watching everything I do. But we need to get used to the fact that that's okay, because in return for that, the tools that I have at my disposal make me superlative in my role. And we have to become accustomed and willing to respect those rules, not violate them, and not cry really if we do violate them and get punished for them, because it has to be a give and take.
I get it, but that's the problem in this case. It's just a take. They can't use it, but we want to collect the information. So
right,
it needs to work both ways.
I agree.
And also sending a clear message of that you don't trust.
Well, trust is a massive piece of this.
That's what I mean. So if that's the message you're delivering from the very beginning, that we're going to punish the many because a few people may misuse it. That's the message that you're sending out there, right? Which I don't think is the right one to do. What you mentioned before we went live, an analogy involving space, which I want to share with everyone.
I think it's a good segue. So there are, in my opinion, 3 great use cases of humans who have given up almost all their privacy in order to be successful in what they do. And when I say all their privacy, I mean really intrusive, even physically, okay? Babies, astronauts, and senior executives / wealthy people, all right? If you think about babies, in order to be successful, which in their case honestly just means staying alive,
Yeah.
everything about their life is done for them. They are fed, they are bathed, which is highly intrusive, their diapers are changed for them, and of course they are helpless, and there's a reason for it. But they're willing to endure this massive intrusion of privacy because it's keeping them alive. As adults, I don't think we would necessarily be comfortable enduring that level.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a certain type of adult who does endure that. Astronauts. An astronaut, in order to be successful in their mission, first of all, jokes aside, is probably wearing some form of diaper.
Yeah.
Has monitors all over her body, tracking every aspect of her health, monitoring every action she takes, whether it's on a spacewalk or doing an experiment inside the capsule, and constantly being squawked at by literally a co-pilot in mission control, correcting her, giving advice, giving direction. Is she complaining that if she has to go to the bathroom that it's probably in the suit?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. She's got to complete the mission. Does it bother her that some group of people know her exact heart rate or that she's got a bead of sweat trickling down her neck? No, she's super grateful for that. It allows her to complete her mission. Massive intrusion of privacy. They know everything about her, her life. The security clearance has probably meant that they interviewed everyone she's ever met in her life. Totally willing to endure that to be successful in the mission. And if we look at the very wealthy or the very senior CEOs of large companies, they have a squad of people whose job it is to take care of every possible mundane task in their life, up to and including taking care of their home, their family, their children, but also their food, their health, their well-being. What do you need to drink next? Where do I need to take you next? Almost like they're a baby.
Yeah.
Why? So that they can focus single-mindedly on their mission, which is for their people, their customers, their shareholders. I like to share this analogy because I think this is, in a way, where we are all headed. And in fact, as technology has progressed, we have all been able to avail of the advantages that used to be only for the super wealthy, or even the more senior to us. It used to be that only mid-level managers and above had a secretary. Now everyone's got a calendar app, totally democratized. It used to be that only the senior people in your firm sent each other memos. Well, for 50 years, we've all been sending each other emails. It used to be that only senior leaders had access to a team of MBAs and analysts to crunch data and come up with new ideas and narratives and business models. We're all going to be able to do that with ChatGPT.
Or a team of creatives.
Exactly, or a team of creatives.
Now you can do that in Midjourney and create.
Exactly. So I think we're all headed in that direction of being as catered to as a baby or an astronaut or a CEO, with the same benefit accruing to us of help me complete my mission single-mindedly without having to worry about all this other mundane stuff.
I love that analogy, by the way. It kind of really makes you think. And one of the things that Shane and I did when we first started the company is we sat down and said, how do we automate all of those things that you're describing so we can focus on growing the business and leaning into our strengths and things that technology can't replace. And that was a game changer for us, whether it was our scheduling tools, whether it was the way we created content and edited, whether it's the website, whether it's our calendar so people can just schedule. You can keep going. LinkedIn tools, where we were getting hundreds of people messaging me on LinkedIn, not sound arrogant, by the way. How do I prioritize those? And
right.
It automatically comes up with responses to the point where we only focused on the value add tasks as well. And that really allowed us to scale the business and focus on those things.
I think there's a massive productivity lift that's coming as a result of nudge. And it's that combination of proactive nudging plus the proactive on the part of the user, leveraging a chat GPT or other conversational or generative AI that's going to be game changing for a lot of us. There's one piece I'll add to that, which I'm particularly always happy to repeat, is that, we were talking earlier about educational expectations.
Oh, yeah.
I think people who study the humanities are going to finally have a massive edge in business, because when you come from an educational background where the onus is on thinking critically versus learn these formulas, learn the periodic table, learn this process, so much of what we're going to be doing is writing based, thinking analytically, processing ideas, and generating ideas. That's a huge advantage for people who went through university not just studying formulas, but reading books, studying
history. I saw a post today about that saying it's like a meme on LinkedIn saying it was like all of the English lit people that have had that degree, like, it's your time to shine.
Yes,
because now it's going to be using those skills to.
That's from Connor Grennan, the Dean of Students at NYU.
Oh, is that what it was?
He's really focused.
Was that on your profile? I read that.
I reposted that.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, that's where I saw it then.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, it made me think. It took me
yeah,
aback.
English major,
like,
stand up.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, that makes so much sense now.
So it's a huge opportunity for people who have a technical background to leverage their ability to think critically, and a huge opportunity for people who come from the humanities to lean on that superpower in order to avail of this technology. It's going to be a really significant convergence.
How do you see this shaping your own industry and the work that you do and how you serve your customers?
So specifically in the HR domain?
Yeah, but it's also Accenture as a business as well. It's already evolved and transformed significantly over the last 5-10 years. But now this is, I can't even, the type of work that you're going to be doing for customers is going to change a lot, right?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think the two different ways that we're approaching it today is, one, we're trying to lead by example. And so very often when clients ask us, how should we approach this? One of the first things we do is show them what we're doing.
Yeah.
Not that it means it's perfect, but it's a good example, and maybe we've started a bit earlier than they have. But the second is around co-innovation and experimentation, because honestly, this is new for the whole world. And the best way to test what works and doesn't work is to play around with it, to experiment together, to innovate together. Where we tend to focus is what are the industry-specific applications to these experiments, because that's where I think companies will benefit the most. So what are the specific shipping and logistics applications and use cases? What are the specific financial services applications? What are the specific retail or education or public sector or health applications? And how do we dive deeper and deeper and deeper? And one of the things that I love about ChatGPT, as we talked about, it's iterative. That's a fantastic feeling to go down. Last night, my son was in Alice in Wonderland at school. Go down the rabbit hole like Alice.
Yeah,
let's just keep going.
It's fascinating.
What will we find? Now we figured out that this has an application that we hadn't expected. Let's ask it 5 more things. Let's query further. And by the way, we might reach a dead end, so we can backpedal. But to do that together with our clients, I think is really exciting, and to identify what are the industry use cases that we can quickly determine are beneficial, that we can provide out of the box, while we continue to experiment on additional use cases.
I kind of feel like there's never been a better time to be alive, honestly. I find it's like, as someone who's in a small business and scaling, like I'm like a kid in the candy shop right now. Last night I was awake till 1 a.m. and I was playing around with Midjourney, which is generative AI. You can create images, type in your prompts, create it, right? So I actually built a pathway that it will take the audio and video from my podcast. It will generate a avatar of Chris, and I would feed in the audio and video into the platform, and this avatar will read. So basically, I've got to the point where I can replace me and just feed it. And I can create a script. I could say, write me a script around the top 10 HR trends, right? I fed it my voice so it can talk like me without me being there.
That's spooky.
You have to read a certain script and it creates your replay.
Is it glitchy or does it feel smooth?
It's smooth. And that's what's scary about it. So now I added the avatar. So now I've got an avatar. It's basically like a Pixar version of Chris with my voice, and I can feed it any script whatsoever, and it will.
So right now, your sound engineer is plotting how they're going to get you to offer them a raise, and call their phone and drop it into the voicemail.
Yeah. Great. I was like, no, but it's
but Chris, you called me. You said.
But it's all the way from the beginning in terms of scheduling the call, recording the podcast. You know, the entire process can be not say outsourced, but can be recreated using generative AI.
And you don't worry about replacing yourself, because I'm sure what you're thinking, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, is that frees you up to then ideate.
Exactly.
What am I going to do next?
That's my whole point. You know, like I would love to a point to where I can grab clips and post them on social media where it's not even me it's not even actually me there. It's taking the content, repurposing it. And it also, the way it exports, you can say, I want export 5 versions, one for LinkedIn, one for Instagram, one for TikTok, and it automatically shifts the dimensions. It automatically writes the post and adds the tags. So I had one for LinkedIn, and it automatically had the exact tags that I wanted on LinkedIn without me even asking for it in there. So it's so exciting. It's scary. It's all at the same time to see it, because now you're seeing posts where you don't even know if it's actually the person or not.
That's something we need to learn. That's where regulation's important.
Yeah.
You know, what is the watermark equivalent?
Yes, we need to figure that out quick.
Required for that, because unfortunately, it is a big world. And we have varying degrees of awareness. We have varying degrees of susceptibility. That's based on age demographic, location, you know, access to these tools. I think, unfortunately, has to become part of our childhood curriculum.
Teach people. 100%.
We're capable of identifying strangers. And I think that's something in our DNA. So it's very hard for someone to go to a school and say, no, I'm your father. I'm here to pick you up. The child will know. But with AI and online, how would they know?
You have no idea.
And that's not something that's built into our DNA as humans. We have to, I think, proactively build that in. I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that we do need to figure out. As parents, we need to start educating our children on at least the awareness until such time that there's a clear, obvious way to identify.
It's a scary, we need to figure that out quickly as well. But aside from that, I feel like there's more positives to negatives, and we'll figure it out.
Well, I hope, you know, going back to where we started, I hope that people stay positive. I hope that the mindset of people as consumers and more importantly as employees, that instead of feeling like, man, I'm going to get replaced, that is this my opportunity to, in a way, feel promoted. You know, if we go back to senior executives, when a CFO gets promoted to CEO, she doesn't say, oh my God, I've lost my job as the chief financial officer. No, she's moved up a level. When we start to bring on these co-pilots, we shouldn't feel less than because they're doing so much of our work. We should feel promoted in the role, that now I've got someone who full-time works for me, helping me be even better at my job. Yeah.
No, I love it. Before I let you go, where can people follow you? Or if they want to reach out, say hi, follow you, where's the best place?
LinkedIn, twitter.com/Yazad or linkedin.com/in/Yazad.
You got Yazad on Twitter?
I mean, one of the benefits of having an unusual name.
Oh, that's pretty good.
A combination of being early to some of the platforms. I think I joined Twitter in 2007. And having an unusual name.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, whether social media evolves. There's a whole other episode where they can talk to the AI version of you.
With your voice.
This is what I mean, and get a response. That's a whole other episode, but thanks for coming on. It's great to see you in person.
Great to see you, and very, very happy for all of your success, and the studio looks phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.